50, 40, 30, 20, retard, 9.
Good afternoon to you, everybody. Today it's a sad day. Aviation is in pain, hurting once again. We've lost one of our fellow aviators. One of the Canadian snowbirds has gone down. Thoughts and prayers go out to the family, Jennifer Casey and the snowbirds team at this difficult time. This episode is proudly brought to you by Optimum Financial Services Group. Optimum has the expertise to guide you through investment, tax, retirement, and estate planning, with a tailored solution to your individual needs. Our objective is to provide you with an optimum solution to protect your wealth. Optimum has expertise in medical aid, legal services, asset finance, and short-term insurance, as well as specialized services in commercial, marine, aviation, and personal liability. Don't choose the average. Choose Optimum. Optimum Financial Services Group is an authorized financial services provider. Good afternoon to you. Welcome to the show. Today I have a remarkable man and high performer. He's reached the top and set records as a player. He's then gone on and set records and reached the top as a coach too. Gary Kirsten was the first South African to play 100 test matches. He set a record in both ODI and test batting high scores. And he has the second longest innings recorded in the history of cricket, nearly 15 hours of batting. He's coached India to World Cup victory in 2011, and he has helped both India and South Africa to reach the top of the test rankings. My name is Alex MacPhail, and this is High Performance Team. Please stay with me. Gary, good afternoon to you. How are you doing today in Cape Town?
All right, and you, Alex?
Yeah, well, thank you. It's great to connect with you. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. And as we kick in, I want to just play this little video clip to just make a taster of what's ahead.
For me, so he just knocked on the window and said, "I want to go in next. Are we good for that?" And I'm not going to say no. Because again, I always liked him to finish games. I'd always with 100 out because I think he was the best in the world at that. So in a final, there's still a lot of runs to get. You know, I did have a second thought, but I just thought I could see it in his eyes. He just wanted to go back, you know. And we were used to shifting the order around. We'd done it for 2-3 years, and then obviously to have a guy who loves those situations going in, I mean, you can't complain.
Dhoni finishes off in style. India lift the World Cup after 28 years.
I think it's always dangerous to look at World Cups as fairy tales. You know, there's no such thing.
Well, no such thing as fairy tales, but surely a momentous, wonderful occasion. Those scenes at the end of that World Cup with a big hit being carried around and celebrations. Tell us your thoughts and feelings on that day.
Well, it was a long time ago, nearly 9 years ago now, and I think it was just an amazing end of a journey for me. It was 3 years of getting up from a kind of comfortable existence here in Cape Town and going into the lion's den, you know, going into a place where it's a little bit unpredictable. I was a South African in an Indian environment, so a foreigner, but essentially just, you know, working with a high-performing team and just trying to get the best out of them and help them be the best that they could be. But it was an incredible final day that I had with the team and an amazing 3-year journey.
Oh, it sounds well. It just looked wonderful. It looked like everyone's beaming and being carried around, celebrated like that on the shoulders. The team really appreciated it, and you touched on a few things there. But let's back up just a little bit and let's start from the beginning, if we can. Let's go back to your formative years and growing up in Newlands. I believe your father was the groundsman at Newlands, and you spent your childhood on the Oval. Is that true?
Yes, it was true. I grew up in a sport-mad family, as most South African kids do. And my dad was married twice, so I was part of his second marriage. But all the four boys kind of hung out together, although there was quite a big age difference. And it was just all sport, So certainly when I was in my high school years, I lived at Newlands Cricket Ground with my dad, and it was an incredible time. I mean, I just boasted having the biggest back garden in the world. It was just cricket in the summer months, and we would just play. I used to love rugby as well, so we played rugby in the winter months, and it was just amazing just to have that facility.
Oh, wonderful, great! And you obviously made the most of it, and all of you guys made a significant effort at professional sport. Okay, so you've had that great formative time. Your dad also played sort of decent level cricket as well, but that was before the professional era. Was that right?
Yeah, he played first class cricket for Border actually, way back in the old days, and he just loved his cricket. And then obviously Peter, my eldest half brother, who's 13 years older than me, was starting to make his way as a professional whilst I was still at school. So we always looked up to him, and obviously it was isolation years for South Africa. So he went overseas to play county cricket to build a name for himself. So it was all about kind of just watching him and using him as a benchmark to where we wanted to go.
That's a nice thing to have. I mean, I see it in my three kids. There's the younger ones always can just look and see what's happening, and they can almost get to things years before their time, because there's just that role model, or someone's doing something which a 5-year-old shouldn't be capable of X, but they see the older one do it, so they're going to do it. And I'm sure in your instance, it must have been wonderful. You didn't get to overlap though on the professional level with Peter, did you?
I did. We played right at the end of his career. We played. I think it was would have been 10 test matches together.
Oh, wonderful.
And if I'm correct, it's a long time ago, and probably about 15 to 20 one-day international. So it was great to have the opportunity to play with him. But I was kind of a 27, 28 at the time, and he was hitting 40, so it was hard for him.
Okay. Well, you had a great career as an opening batsman. And you really defined yourself as someone that can just grind on and just maintain. And as I read at the top of the show, the nearly 15 hours of batting. So if you would maybe just indulge me for just a moment, how do you concentrate for 15 hours out there where people are just solely trying to get you out and you're just trying to make runs and stay in? How do you keep your head together for that long?
Well, I think as a sportsman, we would always talk a little bit about what is our performance flow. When are you in the zone where you can just go out and you can do something that you have been trained to do for a long period of time. I think batsmanship is actually quite a unique thing to be involved in. You have to deal with a lot of failure through your career, but you actually essentially training day in and day out for those very special moments where you have more control over the situation than you would typically have. So as you can imagine, in the world of cricket, it's a very complex environment. There's a lot of variables at stake. You've got one chance. If you make even the slightest of mistake, you can be back in the change room. So it's really just understanding how best you can manage yourself to make good on the performance, and you train to do that. So like any industry, when you get into that situation where you're doing well, I know exactly what I need to do to extend that for as long as possible. And as much as the opposition are trying to default you or get you out, you have the mechanisms and the ways of dealing with it, and you can go all the way. As I said, it doesn't happen that often, but when it happens, it's a wonderful feeling because it's your moment to shine.
Okay, well, I mean, you had a great career as a batsman. For a long time, you were the go-to man, and certainly the days when I watched lots and lots of cricket as a youth, it was always Gary Kirsten on the TV, and you had a particularly good run in the sort of '96, the World Cup that time, and also in the subcontinent. That was an area that you did well. Was there any particular reason why that was a happy hunting ground for you?
Yeah, I think during the time that we started to play really good one-day cricket under Bob Woolmer, I had a really specific role to play in the team. And I think if you can give anyone in any organization good clarity in terms of how much benefit they're adding the organization or your team, it makes people thrive, and that's exactly what happened to me. I was doing the job I was best suited to. And that was thanks to the leadership that they just said, this is all we want you to do. And I just loved every minute of it and really enjoyed the space. I think the period of time in India, it was a great time to be an opening batsman for a number of reasons. One, the wickets were really flat in those countries, and two, they had banned the bouncer rule. So you weren't allowed to bowl a bouncer. So it made it a little bit easier for opening batsmen facing the new ball against quicker bowlers, knowing that there weren't going to be balls flying around your head,
Sure.
which allowed you to be a little bit braver and you could take on a bit more. So I think I went through a fortunate period in batting where we had it in our favor, and especially as an opening batsman in the subcontinent where we're batting up front where the ball's coming on a little bit more, it makes it easier to score.
Okay, well, opportunities present themselves, but it's still up to the individual to take advantage of them. So, well done, you did, and you certainly had a great run at that sort of period as well, scoring the record high scores. But okay, so you had a great career, and we want to sort of move off the career of batting now, and at the end of it, you retire, and there's a period of quiet, and then tell me about the point where you seemingly applied to become the coach of India. I know that you didn't apply, I'm saying, but tongue in cheek there. But how did this India coaching job come about?
Yeah, I retired in 2004, and I was at a point where I wasn't sure where I was going to go with my career. I was like any one of us 37-year-old washed-out sportsmen who has to move into a second career. But it's quite a challenging time for professional sportsmen because you kind of earn well all the way through your career. I had a contract for 20 consecutive years. Mm-hmm. So, and then suddenly you're on no contract and you're 37 and you've got two young kids at home, and a family. And you think, well, in those days we weren't earning the kind of money, the money the guys are earning today. They can pick up a significant contract, and which will see them, through the rest of their days, to be honest with you, some of them.
Sure.
But, for me, it was always, okay, I've got to build my second career as quickly as possible. So I didn't even take a week off. I retired in New Zealand in April 2004, and a week later I was in an office. I rented out a place, and I just said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to start working, And for me, it was I just thought, it's such a privilege having been one of the first South Africans since isolation to be playing the game internationally. I went on, over 40 tours for South Africa. Mm-hmm. And I kind of got a real feel and flavor for what it was like to perform in other parts of the world. And I thought I had good value to offer. So if I was going to stay in cricket, which was a natural place for me to stay, it was either commentary, which I didn't want to do, just because I'm quite a shy guy. I don't really enjoy being the face. The other one was coaching, which I thought was a great opportunity because I think there you become an educator, teacher, a leader, a mentor. And I thought it was just like a really significant place to be. So I didn't know where it was going to start, but I got into coaching straight away. And I wasn't sure I wanted to become a team coach. I was running my own cricket academy here in Cape Town, working with about 20 players. Built a nice little small business for myself. But I always had in the back of my mind I'd love to coach a cricket team. So I went down at the end of 2007 and I phoned up the head of sport at UCT and I said, would you mind if I come and coach the UCT first team? And he said, well, what a pleasure. We would love to have you. And I went down to 3 practices over that period, and I think it was after the 3rd practice I got a phone call from Sunil Gavaskar, who's a famous Indian player, and he said to me, would you consider coaching the Indian cricket team? And I nearly fell off the chair. I was like, what is this all about? I thought it was like a hoax,
Wackhead getting you.
Yeah, I thought it was someone trying to pull a fast one on me, and I never replied to the email, and then I got a call or another email two days later, and he said to me, would you consider it to come for an interview? So I did. I went to India and I went for an interview, which was a it was a scary prospect, to be honest with you. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Anyway, I didn't have much expectation around the interview, but I was offered the job, and in bizarre circumstances, because I had no CV to speak of. You certainly couldn't do that in the aviation business, that's for sure. I got offered the job, and 2 months later I was flying to Australia to work with some of the best cricketers in the world. Tendulkar, Dravid, Laxman, Harbhajan Singh, Zaire Khan, Ms Dhoni, Virendra Sehwag, and it was like quite an intimidating space to go into with very little experience.
Sure.
I think the one thing that probably served in my favor was I had played professionally for 17 years against a lot of them, or all of them, in fact, and it kind of provided me with a measure of credibility that I kind of knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, okay, but there's a whole different side of things that goes on here now. Having looked at some of your interviews recently, you go into India. This is one of the biggest sport crazy nations out there, and it is for cricket, and they want you to be the guy to make them the best at cricket. And there's only about 1 billion fans who are expecting you to do that job. So what is that like, arriving there and being this almost in the spotlight guy as an outsider, firstly, but there's so many, it's such a big following.
Yeah, I think the head coach of the Indian cricket team is probably, I would say, the biggest sporting job in the world. It's if you just took it on pure following and support of a country, of a national team. But I think in many ways what they were trying to do is match me up. They were trying to match me with the kind of personality that the team was looking for. They had previously had Greg Chappell as an Australian who had come in and been their coach. And what I could gather was it didn't end well there. I found out a lot of reasons why, and it was almost a clash of personalities and a clash of a way of doing things. And so I remember saying to myself, you need to be careful in terms of what you impose on these players. They're very talented players, but at the same time they do need an influence, and they do need to see a way of doing things. But it was very important for me that I didn't just come and dump my way on them as a leader of them, that I got to find out what they were about and what would make them tick. So I went on a huge fact-finding mission for literally 3 months of the start of my job, just to really get to understand these guys properly.
Okay,
what made them tick?
Yeah. What is the fact-finding mission? How do you go about that? Where do you start?
I started to ask a lot of questions, and I went from player to player, did a heap of one-on-ones, started to watch them at training, how they prepared for matches. I became very curious as a coach. I wanted to know what made each guy tick as an individual brand. I wanted to know. I asked very provocative questions. How you going to improve as a player? What do you think you need to do? And then I asked a lot of the team. I became quite demanding on how they operated as a group of people, because, as you know, high-performing teams require to operate to a set of values. And when I arrived there, I didn't see any of that. I just saw things being done a certain way that for me they required some checking in with. And we did it together. We did it collectively. I mean, we co-created the culture and how we wanted to operate. And I think fortuitously for me is that I inherited a bunch of cricketers that were primed for high performance. I mean, they were really right there, ready to go. I think my relationship with Ms Dhoni, who was the captain of the team, was I think it was a very, very important leadership relationship.
Sure. Because
as a South African and an Indian, we kind of connected quite quickly.
Okay.
And I think he trusted what I wanted to do and how I could offer the team as a leader.
Okay.
And then obviously, he was a game-breaking captain, certainly the best leader I've ever worked with.
Okay, well, can I just pause you a sec there? So you've got this. You arrive there with this big fans and big expectations and the biggest sporting supported team on the planet. you've also got all these stars, but you see the sort of looseness of these great players, and they're not really gelled together. And you start from the sort of the ground up and build up, and you tie in nicely with the captain, with Ms Dhoni. But who's in your team besides the team that's on the field on the day? Your support team on the coaching side and the sort of behind the scenes people. Who's in your team that's helping foster this sort of rebirth and regeneration of a new team that becomes this high-performing team and ultimately wins the World Cup?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. You need to build a group of people that essentially become your lieutenants. They're on the ground, they're watching the behaviors, the culture, the way you want to do things. They're reporting back to you in terms of if they see anything slightly suspicious or see anything that doesn't feel right in terms of what you're trying to create. But let me say that it was a fairly organic process. It wasn't overly structured. It was probably playing into my philosophy and way of doing things, that we allowed behaviors on a daily basis to determine, how we wanted to operate, So that behavior became appropriate. That behavior became inappropriate.
Okay.
And, it was my job to monitor it and then to announce what was an appropriate way of operating as a group of people. And I think probably the most significant appointment that I made in my support staff, only because I could make one when I started the job, was Paddy Upton, who was a mate of mine, but he had also qualified himself up as an executive coach. And he had done quite a bit of work in the corporate space, but he understood sport and cricket. And I asked him to come on board because I thought he would add great value to the players in the team at a one-on-one level, in the cut and thrust of high performance, where winning and losing is on the line every day. Mm-hmm. I wanted him to help players deal with their vulnerabilities and the toughness of their situations. But as it turned out, he added great value to me because I was a new coach. And I think often as leaders, we don't get feedback, We don't get enough feedback in terms of whether we're doing a good job or not.
Okay, so did he become a bit of your sounding board at the same time?
Yeah. He started to give me really significant feedback, but some of it I didn't like to hear. But I think importantly, I learned very quickly on the job. So because he was a trusted source, I knew that if he had a very direct, harsh word to say to me about a behavior or something that I did or the way I led a meeting, he'd let me know straight away.
Okay.
So I kind of learned how to, very quickly, I guess, how to be the best version of myself as a leader in every situation, through the wins, through the losses, through the high emotions, through the difficulties, that he was there to say that was appropriate, that was inappropriate. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, as leaders, you want to try and, we talk about in cricket, as a leader, if you haven't won the change room, in other words, if you don't have credibility with your players, you've got nothing. They're not going to listen to you. You can say and speak and shout and do whatever you want, but they're not going to listen to you. So having that, winning the change room and knowing that when I did say something that was quite direct and emotional, the players would get me, and they would end up wanting to play for me and do well for me.
Well, I like that term you use, winning the change room. And I know the barefoot coach, I know you continue to work with Paddy in your high performance coaching, etc. So that's hopefully a conversation I can have one day as well. But I remember at the time when you were getting into coaching, you had a website and you recommended a great book, John Krakauer, Into Thin Air, and I read it and it was great. Was there any books or any sort of external influence that stood out for you at this time going on to this big job coaching India?
Yeah, I mean, I've always read a lot, and I love sporting autobiographies. So I would have gone through, all the top sporting coaches in the world. From Mourinho to Wenger to Ferguson to Bill Walsh to you could go on forever across all different sports, and all I was doing was just trying to find out anything that could add value to my coaching, not necessarily to coach the way they coach, but to add value to what I was doing. So that was fun. I think the best book that I've read of late, or the two best of late, one is called The Team of Teams, written by General Stanley McChrystal, who wrote a book on the formation of the SEALs and how they make life-threatening decisions in a split second based on emergent intelligence. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, great.
And then I enjoyed the Culture Code by Daniel Coyle around how teams operate effectively under different types of cultures. Yeah. So
good. I've made some notes now. I've got some more reading material for the next few weeks. Thanks, Gary. Okay. Now you say you've built your team. You've brought in your key player, and you're starting to win the change room. And talking about change room now. So now I want you to fast forward to that World Cup final the day before, and you tried a little different tack on the night before, and you bring in Mike Horn. But tell me about how that came about and the influence and how it worked that evening. What was the result? Well, we know the result the next day, but what was the result that evening?
Yeah, I think it was quite a nerve-wracking time for everyone. We had pulled in, Mike had come in earlier in the tournament, and he is a friend of Paddy's. So I got to know him through Paddy, and we pulled him in. We said, let's just go for it. And the players really warmed to him. He's an incredible adventurer. He's a great storyteller. And I always said to him, in all the times that I was with him, I said, you don't have to tell us how to play cricket. Just tell us what you did to get over the line, or not get over the line, very importantly. I think there's great stories through failures as much as there is success. And on that night before the World Cup final, we had run our race in terms of preparation and getting ourselves up and ready for the next day. We'd played Sri Lanka so many times prior to that World Cup. I made a decision that we actually weren't going to talk about cricket at all on the evening of the World Cup final, and this was going to be Mike's floor. I just said to him, we've spoken enough. We actually don't have to say anything about tomorrow's game. There's enough intentionality around it. There's enough motivation. What I would love you to do is for 40 minutes, just tell us a story of one of your adventures. And he chose a brilliant one. He chose a North Pole walk where he had to make a decision with a day to go. I think he'd kind of walked for 97, 98% of the walk, and he made a decision with a day to go that he had to turn around because he got frostbite. Ooh. And he reckoned it was a life-changing decision. I mean, if he hadn't turned around, he would have died in his view. It was a great story. and I mean, a couple of the Indian players had tears in their eyes, and it was a fantastic last evening it was almost like the journey, it was coming to an end. We had one more day left, and we spoke throughout that World Cup, not about the burden of winning the World Cup for 1.2 billion Indian people. We spoke throughout that World Cup about the journey that we were going on with the Indian people. Mm. And it kind of took away the pressure a little bit because there was just heaps of pressure around. But we tried to build that language, that it was actually a journey we were on, walking hand in hand with the Indian people rather than they expecting you to win, because the burden would have been too much. There was too much pressure attached to that performance throughout the World Cup. And we tried to, we were very fortunate because it was a home World Cup. We had opportunities to get away, and see family. And so we tried to normalize the environment as much as possible, whereas other countries, especially the teams that were making the playoffs, they'd been there for a long time, and we felt that we could take advantage of the fact that we were at home and make it as homely and feel as real as possible in that space.
Okay, well, I feel like you're reading off the script. You're answering questions before I even get them. It's wonderful. A couple of things about then the next day. I don't want to spend too much on it, but just so you changed strategy on the day, and that's where that clip played at the beginning of the show where Ms Dhoni knocks on the window and says, "I want to go in," and you could see it in his eyes. And you've also mentioned before that this is something not completely unusual to change strategy on the day. But talk to me about this idea of having the strategy. And, like I related to flying. So we go off flying. The strategy is to go from Johannesburg to New York. And on the way, there's tactical decisions to be taken along the way. You have to go around the thunderstorm. You might have to climb, descend. You might have a sick passenger. You might have some technical anomaly. And the tactical decisions will take over. But then you have to get back on strategy. So just talk to me about this change up where he knocks on the window and you get that knowing look and you have that uncomfortable feeling and then you go ahead and it works.
Yeah, I think we had built the team up over 3 years on being ready to be really flexible. been ready to move from a kind of a plan A strategy, which was based on the makeup of our team and how we wanted to play the game, to a plan B, to a plan C. We were comfortable with the unpredictability, and that's what I love about the Indians, actually. They don't mind the risk that is involved. And I mean, we made some errors as well. We made some strategic decisions that we got wrong. I never once had a player come up and say, well, that's no good, and we don't buy into that. It was like, if it didn't work, that's fine. We'll move on. We take the learning and we move forward. So I think we had prepared ourselves for an occasion like that where there was going to be a slight shift in strategy. And we were comfortable with it. It was never a big issue. I mean, we had times where we would have 3 guys padded up to go into bat next. It wasn't like, you batted 3, you batted 4, and you batted 5. We looked at the situation in the game. We picked up the intel that was available to us, and we would make a snap decision just like that, and be comfortable in the decision, whether it was right or wrong. And I think it's an incredible learning tool from a leadership perspective, because when you get into that space and you've got people that back you, even if you don't get it right, you end up making much more accurate decisions along the way, because you don't have the fear of the mistake.
Yes.
And so we were comfortable with that, and that particular incident was actually a strategic decision. A couple of the senior players felt that we wanted to have a right-hander, left-hander combination, which we had spoken about all the time. Especially against Muralitran, who was one of their threats in their team in that final. Sending MSN early was a strategic move, although I felt there was a lot more attached to it, because here was your captain, prepared to go in a situation still with 160-odd runs to get, which was not where we liked to bat him. We wanted him to, plan A was always for him to finish later. But that's Ms Dhoni for you. He fronts up to the pressure. He fronts up to the big moments.
Sure.
He had a fairly quiet World Cup. He hadn't got a huge amount of runs. But cometh the hour, cometh the man, and you've got to understand the individuals that can do that.
Yeah. So that's quite literally the example of, pick me, coach, I'm ready. and he delivered.
I'm ready to go. But as I said, it was a strategic decision. It wasn't just a emotional one. We felt it would have been better to have a right-hander, left-hander combination at all times at the crease. That was one of our key strategies in selection as well, is just to make sure, we had a good mix of left-hander, right-handers in the team.
Sure. Last question about World Cup before I want to move into some other things. What was it like working with someone like Sachin Tendulkar in his home ground? I mean, he's the master. He's almost a deity there. How do you steer and guide this person, knowing that this person is so capable already? How was that relationship for you?
Well, the one thing I really enjoyed about Sachin, and we formed a close friendship over the years, was a man who had an unbelievable 20-year international career by the time I got there. His willingness to keep learning, his willingness to keep improving, and his insatiable desire it's just to be in love with the game as much as he can. And by his own admission, he had said he had fallen out of love with the game. Oh. He'd found the game quite hard work. So it was certainly my job as a coach of the team to make sure he had the time of his life. And in the 3 years that I was with the team, he got 18 international hundreds.
Yeah,
18 in 3 years.
That's amazing.
So he, including a first ever double hundred in ODI cricket. So it was incredible working with him. His humility around his learning, for someone that's so good, who you would think would have all the answers, he was still willing to ask the questions, and I really loved that about him.
Doesn't that strike you as, there's lots of examples of these people seemingly, you ask them the question, but they're the ones that often turn it back and say, help me just improve a bit better. I've still got more to learn. And another classic example.
Absolutely. And just the ability to accept people seeing his game in a different way, and wanting to improve.
So you went into India with this plan A and build. Did you have a plan B if plan A didn't work?
Was that in the final?
No. It's just your approach to the job in the beginning was to scout around and build up. Did you have a plan B if plan A didn't work?
No. To be honest with you, it was it was yeah, it was. I think every one of us as well. We kind of sometimes go into the dark where we're not sure. And for me, my life's kind of been around that. To be honest with you, I like being in slightly uncomfortable places where where you're not sure what's coming around. Maybe I'm just wired that way, and I just find you can sometimes do your best work in that space.
Yeah, well, certainly we're in the current scenario. A lot of us find ourselves in that space. Yeah. Okay, Gary, a wonderful way to end that time in India. You finish up, wrap it up, win the World Cup, and come back to South Africa, and then an opportunity presents itself once again to get involved in South African cricket. I know an aspiration. Reading your wife's book, to coach South Africa was one of those dream jobs for you, and tell me about that experience of getting involved with South African cricket again.
Yeah, I mean, as you rightly say, it would be a dream to, I played 11 years for South Africa, and then to come back and be the coach, was certainly a great feeling. It was a tougher job than the Indian job, funny enough. I think, obviously, for a lot of fairly easy reasons to understand. I think, I was more all in as a South African. I found the South Africans very different to coach to than the Indians. And required different things of me. But saying that, I think my focus of attention, because we were still 4 years out from a World Cup when I started with the South Africans, when I looked at the team and across the formats, I realized that the Test team was kind of primed to be the best team in the world. Great players, and I tend to work much better with senior players. I think my coaching style is more collaborative, so I like to canvass idea and opinions, and then run, and then run with the best one rather than working with a bunch of younger players who are looking for more guidance. So that worked quite well. Graham was a highly successful captain already when I started, and the Test team just wasn't quite firing like it needed to, So we really focused our attention on building a 2-year plan with the Test side, and that 2-year plan was we wanted to come out the other side of it, not losing a Test match, pretty much. Just like, can we win for 2 years or not lose for 2 years? And I think we lost one Test match in 2 years, and it was an amazing effort. We brought in Vernon Philando, who had an immediate impact into the team. Dale Steyn, we decided not to play him too much one-day cricket because we wanted him fresh and ready for Test matches. And then you obviously had Graham, who was so primed to take this team to win in England, win in Australia, become the number one Test team in the world, beat anyone that came on our shores. And we stumbled in the first hurdle where we lost to Australia in a Test series here. We drew the series, we didn't win it. We lost the first Test. We won the first Test. You remember, we bowled Australia out for 40 in the second innings, and they were 19 for 9 at one point, and we were behind the game there and won that. And then after that, we just started to really get some good flow going, and the guys played really well.
I'm putting a picture up of I think it was the Australia tour where you got a trophy, and you managed to get 4 tours. Victorious in 4 tours and 3, like a hat trick of it all. I mean, what a great time. So the people obviously bought into the vision. You said it was a bit difficult. You have to upskill yourself with a new skill. You figured out how to coach the Indians. Coaching South Africans a different beast. And but the results are there. You've managed to get people to buy in. And then not an easy decision once again at the end of this time, coaching South Africa. And then family comes first. I mean, tell us about the thought processes of switching this off. I mean, seemingly you're enjoying it now because it's the fruits of your labor are there. You're a South African. South Africa's doing well, and there's a World Cup just ahead. But back to family.
Yeah, Alex, it was a tough call. A really tough call, which hit myself and my wife between the eyes like no other. It was in 2012. I retired in 2013, but in 2012, I'm 260 days away from home.
Yeah.
So whilst the family were traveling through that time and we could see each other every now and again, it wasn't a lifestyle that had any longevity attached to it, especially with a young family. And I'd always said to Cricket South Africa that I will coach all formats under a 2-year contract, or I'll just do one day cricket under a 4-year contract.
Okay.
And they said to me, no, they would like me to coach all. So I said, well, let's just go for a 2-year, and then we'll see where we are. And by the end of the 2 years, I was blown. I was exhausted.
Okay.
I was loving the coaching, as I always have done. I was loving the work, but I was becoming depressed because I couldn't see my family. My kids were growing up without their dad, and it was too much to bear. I had one or two very dark moments in hotel rooms.
Oh, sure.
And just thinking, what am I doing here? And so it was a really calculated move. My wife said, "You're mad." She said, "Keep working. We'll make it work." And I said, "No, I've got to make this call. I've got to be brave around this. I've got to show some courage on my convictions and go. This is where I want to go." So, I made the call amidst some criticism, and I had to go and stand up in front of the Cricket South Africa board and give them the reasons why I didn't want to carry on.
Oh.
It wasn't an easy process, but when I reflect back on it, it was the right decision for that moment in time.
Sure. Now you mentioned there that you were just depleted by then. I know it was obviously a taxing 3 years with the culmination in India, and you kind of jumped into South Africa in another 2 years. Was it the combination of the two, or was it particularly hard coaching South Africa, or was it just the whole bunch of factors altogether? Why were you more depleted at the end of that 2 years than after the India?
Yeah, I think it was a culmination. When I started with India, my oldest was 4 years old.
Okay.
When I finished, with South Africa, March on 5 years, he's 9 years old. So it's suddenly now, and I've hardly seen him. So I think it was the realization came, and I didn't want to be one of those completely absent fathers. I mean, we understood both sides. This is my job. This is my industry. I've got to keep working. I can't suddenly just say, well, I can't work anymore because I need to be at home all the time.
Sure.
And that's when the kind of T20 leagues became quite appealing because, whilst you can't make as big a difference as you can at international level, you can still add value to a team over a shorter space of time.
Okay, well now I want to just also touch on some things there. So you've now stepped away from the international coaching, regroup at home, but you've also got Gary Kirsten cricket, it's your high performance coaching going on there too. But you're also obviously quite a celebrity, and if you make yourself famous in India with Indians, then that's a big chunk of the world that knows your name too. And you've done lots of keynote addresses, and you've been involved in leadership and mentorship programs. And one particular incident I want to bring up is the University of the Free State rector, Jonathan Jansen, mentioned that was the most meaningful and inspirational message on leadership I have ever heard. Tell me about that day.
Well, you're going to put me in a spot here, Alex, because I can't remember. I do remember going to the university and meeting up with a group. But as you have mentioned, I've been very fortunate since I got back from India. I've probably done over 200 leadership presentations, and it's been a real privilege to be in that space because I think I'm learning more than anything. So I'm not quite sure what I said that was relevant at that time, but hopefully, I mean, whenever I go into those spaces, I want to make a contribution. So hopefully, I was able to add some value.
And do you enjoy that, public speaking and leadership and mentorship and motivational talking, that side of the game?
Yeah, I enjoy facilitation more than that. I enjoy learning with others. I'm not so sure that I don't like motivational talks and stuff like that. I enjoy being provocative and curious and just throwing ideas and concepts out and brainstorming and challenging, because I think every industry requires different kinds of leadership at different phases, So I'm always interested to know what kind of leadership suits a particular environment at a particular time. And I've certainly learned as I've gone on this leadership journey that the one thing I will make a statement on, however controversial it is that leadership for me is the differentiator in any environment, in any organization, any group of people, any team. The quality of the leadership will determine the success of that organization. That for me is controversially I'm going to stand up on the parapets and announce that, because I've seen enough stories of both ways. I've seen enough stories of the inappropriate leadership, and then obviously, very appropriate leadership. And for me, it's a moving target. I think leadership blueprints are sometimes quite dangerous, because often I'll look at a blueprint and I'll say, well, I can't lead like that. That's not authentically who I am.
Sure.
I can't be that person. But maybe for a certain environment, it works really well.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me then what's happening now with Gary Kirsten Cricket, high performance coaching. In the space of high performance around the world, we see that the principle of incremental gains, made famous 10 odd years ago with the cycling team Sky. How do you relate to high performance teams, incremental gains, your preparation, your execution with precision, and your review? What kind of concepts do you work on regarding incremental gains and your high performance outputs?
Yeah, I think for us in high-performing teams, as weird as it sounds, I mean, we would always, at the beginning of a campaign, put up on the wall where we wanted to go. And I think every high-performing team needs direction. You need to know where you're going. But once that flip chart or that piece of paper off the wall is written, it doesn't get to refer to again, because it's easy to kind of talk about where you want to go in 6 months' time or a year's time, or even for some of these campaigns, 8 weeks' time. But it's how do you get there that for me is the most important, And so we'll often refer to, process is more important than the results, because as sporting teams, you cannot rest on your laurels on the back of a result. You win a game, so now you do something different. Or you lose a game and you do something different. So for us, excellence sits in how we wake up in the morning. Excellence sits in how we eat breakfast and what is our routine from the moment we wake up. So we're trying to it's one click on the flywheel. We're trying to tick every box that we can to make sure that by the time we reach the performance or match time, we've given ourselves the absolute best chance of succeeding. And there's no guarantee in sport to success, and that's why sport is sport. Because you just cannot guarantee that that you're going to win more games than you're going to lose. But what you will do is the most successful teams find a way through their systems and their processes that they will build some excellence which will reflect in the results. And I think that's what we as coaches, that's what we're looking for. When I research success stories, I was reading something on how Liverpool, how they train, how they do their little six-a-side soccer games, and how intensely competitive it is, and how important it is for the group that those games are competitive, that there's no holds barred and there's no expense spared to make sure that they're competing harder with each other than they're competing with the opposition. So I love those little kind of success stories, and I think every leader is just looking for excellence in everything they do, whether it's preparation, whether it's in how do you reflect, how do you debrief, how do you plan, and I mean that for me is the learning cycle. You're reflecting, you then debriefing, you then planning ahead, you then going to practice, and you play the match again. So it's you got to complete the cycle, and as professional coaches, that's all we do. We just spend our days making sure that we just debrief to go through everything.
Oh, you mentioned there, Click on the Flywheel, another good book, Good to Great, Jim Collins. It's wonderful, and it's also got that short, the Flywheel. Thanks. So you also talked about waking up with the mindset of winning or of excellence. So what is the day in the life of you? I mean, in this day it's a bit different right now, but you've got your exercise window. What is your kind of routine at the moment, Gary?
Well, I like to stay busy. So we're doing a lot of different. I've got a lot of moving parts at the moment in my life. We're running an online coach education course at the moment for 20 aspiring young coaches, and that's taking up a serious amount of my time.
Okay.
But it's been great, because what I've been doing is I've been touching base with a lot of coaches around the world over Zoom or Skype or any one of these platforms, and just connecting, and just getting to find out what their best thinking is on various things. So that's been fun. I run a foundation where we work with township coaches, and we're building township cricket in Khayelitsha in Cape Town, hopefully to the next level. We've built a full-on artificial cricket field, the first of its kind in a township.
Oh, wow.
Cost us 5 million rand to build, but it's a great journey that we're on there. Obviously, everything's been stalled now over this COVID period.
Sure.
Yeah, and then I still coach teams. I'll do the South African T20 League at the end of the year. I'm doing the 100 competition, which has now been postponed. It's the start of a new competition in England. So I'm very fortunate to be in all sorts of different places, but I have a lot of moving parts. I'm a fanatical mountain biker, so I've got to find time to do that most days. But I try to stay busy, put it that way.
It sounds like very busy. Sounds like my kind of life too. Gary, last question for you. What is your top tips for creating a high-performance team?
Yeah, that's, as I said, I don't think there's any blueprint or framework. I do think that there are certain fundamentals that high-performing teams have, no matter where they are or who they're from. And I would say that a high-performing individual, which I think would reflect into a team, they are very intentional around everything that they do. So when they come to practice, there's an intensity around their practice, and there's an attention to detail around it. And it's incredible when you see high-performing teams operate like that. It's almost like their days aren't wasted. There's nothing. Everything that they do is geared towards being the best of the best. There are no shortcuts. There's no I'm going to take the easy road, because they know that if they do, they're going to get exposed. And I think professional sport creates teams because there's so much of a demand on winning or losing. Leaders of these teams know that they have to go through every little bit of detail that they need to go through to make sure the team's ready for success. And it's beautiful to watch because no one's taking shortcuts. So where are we finding the competitive advantage? Well, we're all in the high performance space. So we're looking for, either in recruitment, it might be, some talk about culture and building a magnificent culture where individuals can all thrive in that culture. And that's something that's very dear to me because, we've got two facets. One is the art of coaching. The other one is the science of coaching. Mm-hmm. And I think in science, you build knowledge around your skill sets and you can build more knowledge. But the art of coaching is how do you take the knowledge and how do you apply it to a group of people and make them the best that they can be as individuals and as a team. And I love the art of coaching because I think every environment requires slightly something different of you as a leader.
Well, that's fascinating. Gary, I think we could probably talk for another 2 hours. I've really enjoyed this time. But I tell you what, why not next time you're in Joburg and the world settles down back to normal, come down to South African Airways and we can show you what a high-performance Airbus looks like, and we'll give you a spin in the Airbus and we can take the conversation from there.
I'll take that up. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it, Gary. All the best.
Yes.
Well, folks, what a wonderful conversation. Thanks for joining the show today. I appreciate your support. Remember to subscribe and share. And until we see you again next time, stay safe.